Your Wardog bases are bad. Oh, hey there. Are you an undiagnosed autist who likes studying 15th century medieval engineering warfare like me? Well, you've come to the right channel. See, if you're like me, you probably jumped into the beta testing of the game this weekend and absolutely loved the game and where it's going. But one of the things I immediately noticed when joining the game was that everybody building bases basically built fish in a barrel shooting boxes. I got fragged and mortared and artilleried more times than I got shot outside of my own base that the friendlies were making. Now, I'm a professional manufacturing engineer, and I am also one of the best base builders and fortress designers in a little game you might have heard of called Rust. Today, we're going to talk about not making terrible bases in a video game like Wardogs, where base building is going to be a pretty damn important part of the game. Lesson 1. So in order to build amazing bases, I'm going to show you some tactics and tips I've used over the past decade of building fortresses in pretty much any game where there's base building. So let me introduce you to Sebastian Vauban, and don't let his funny little hair fool you. This man was one of the most deadly men to ever walk the face of the earth. In his 50 years, he sieged over 50 cities and fortresses and did not lose a single battle. 50-0. He built over 130 strongholds, 30 fortresses, and he invented ricochet firing. Back in his day, they would just lob cannonballs, but he was like, nah, son, aim for the legs. Basically taking 6-pound cannonballs and turning them into double leg takedowns. But instead of one guy, he would do it to battalions. He invented defense in depths, detached outerworks like ravelins, hornworks, crownworks, tenales, and counter guards. He would ride 2,500 miles a year while sieging cities. He literally besieged the entire Earth's circumference 5 times over. Napoleon Bonaparte himself, the greatest conqueror of the world, respected him so much that 101 years later, after Vauban's death, Napoleon took his heart and sent it to the Cathedral of Saint Louis des Invalides in Paris, France, establishing him as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, siege engineer warfare strategist of all time. And before Vauban died, he wrote a book which translates to On the Attack and Defense of Fortified Places. Which brings us to lesson number 1. Stop letting the enemy throw grenades over your walls. Okay, it's not technically called that. The technical terms is dead space, defense in depth, and standoff distance. But take a look at this base that I built to showcase these principles. Defense in depth is exactly what it sounds like. Your highest point, which is the tower here, is going to be the center point of your fortifications. Then you're going to have an outer wall surrounding it, and then you will have layers of defense past that. You want to capture as much real estate as possible.
It's free real estate.
When placing a fob down to deny the enemy movement and reduce the chances of them fragging you over the walls. This is defense in depth. Now you further inhibit the enemy's movement and increase standoff distance by using barbed wire to force the enemy to route in specific areas you want them to go. This also aids in compartmentalization, but we will come back to that siege tactic in a minute. Listen. So while we all wait for Wardogs to come out, I was watching this YouTuber named Omaha wreck an entire team with nothing more than a compound bow and C4. He ran up to a base and basically decimated 12 or so guys and completely locked down a base. And this is a perfect example of building a base that is basically a fish in a barrel shooting gallery. And then I saw the base design, and this type of design for a base hurts my engineering soul. Let me show you one of my favorite fortification engineering components, the bastion. Let me introduce you to my man Francisco di Giorgio, who wrote a book called Trattati di Architettura. And in 1484, he handed this book over to a man you probably have heard of, Leonardo da Vinci. See, Giorgio and Leo were friends, and one of the craziest pieces of history here is that to this day, the only book that has ever been confirmed to have been owned by Leonardo da Vinci is, in fact, Giorgio's book, Trattati di Architettura. In this book, Giorgio designs one of the first concepts of what would later become star fortresses and the bastions. Giorgio is considered the grandfather of the bastion. Giorgio was a bit obsessed with symmetry, but don't let the beauty of these designs fool you. Star fortresses and bastions are literally the angels of death personified in engineering and architecture. I like to think 500 years in the future, when Norman MacLeod was designing the Claymore Mine and he thought it'd be funny to put front towards enemy, he definitely read Trattiati di Architectura, because this book lines out a fundamental shift in the entire thought process and methodology of designing castles and fortresses. See, before Giorgio, it was understood that you built castles high and walls tall in order to dominate a field as far as possible with arrows, maximizing your range and reach. And the rounded edges of a tower resisted battering rams. Giorgio, though, said, nah, son, towers aren't meant to fire outwards. They should be designed to rake the walls with cannon shot. I don't know where the origins of meat grinder first originated, but I like to think that the bastion fortress is the origins of the word meat grinder. So let me show you how a star fortress works. This is a bastion, this is a hornworks, and this is a ravelin. The bastion and the ravelin are very similar. The only difference is the bastion is always connected to the main perimeter wall, whereas a ravelin is usually connected with a wooden bridge, and in the event that the enemy was to take this, they would just burn the bridge, and now the enemy can't get into the main fortress. So the genius of these fortress designs is there is absolutely no angle where the enemy can hide. In a traditional fortress where you would have like a rounded tower here, the enemy could hide behind that tower, creating dead space. So if I was to draw out a rounded tower here, this edge bastion would not be able to hit this area right here. This would be dead space where the enemy can hide. Now, traditionally, the towers in a medieval tower would be firing outwards towards the enemy, and star fortresses definitely did that. But the main point and difference in the way that they thought with star fortresses is the bastions would fire and rake down the sides of the fortress wall, and this was called enfilade fire. Now, one really important fundamental with bastion fortresses is each layer of defense can never be higher than the layer behind it. So if we come down here and look at the heights of each component, you can never have a component that is forward facing that is higher than the back facing defenses. So if you're standing on this tower corner, you can still fire down the length of all of these defenses. So any enemy that comes up here can be hit from this entire wall. Any enemy coming here can be hit, and any enemy taking this ravelin can also be hit. So each layer of defense is able to cover and fire down the rake or the infillading fire down through the defense. So with a star fortress, you can basically expand out the defenses infinitely as long as you follow those principles where each layer is lower than the one before it, enabling cross-covering fire. So let me show you what those principles would look like in an actual video game. This is a star fortress I used to build in Rust with my clan. It has 3 layers of defense, starting with the fortress itself. It's a 3-point star fortress. And then we have it connected to an outer wall or a perimeter wall. In Rust, these are called China walls, creating the second layer of defense. And then finally, the third layer would be the ravelins. And then I would also extend outer works beyond the ravelins, but I just didn't design it in this because it takes a lot of time to design these. But as we fly into the fortress, you can see that the main fortress allows you to maneuver and cover 360 degrees of any other part of the defense. So I can clear the China wall here or the outer bastion walls on the second layer from the first layer. And then if I move to the second layer on these bastion walls, I can now cover and rake the ravelins on the outside, as well as firing down the line of the wall. This base is designed in a way that only 3 people need to be online to cover 100% of this base. I usually play with a clan of 20 or 30 guys though. You'll also notice that I have respected the heights concept of star fortresses, where each defense of layer, which we're standing inside the main fortress right now in the tower, is higher than the defense beyond it. So this is defense level 1, this would be defense level 2, and then this would be defense level 3. And then there would also be outer works here. I would have barricades and walls and other ravelins that would be smaller here, allowing maneuvering and defense of the base outside to counterattack the enemy. This type of base is really great too for counterattacking, because typically an enemy is going to build a raid base and they're going to be assaulting you. But as they move into your fortress, you will quickly see how dangerous and deadly these fortresses are. But the Star Fortress gives you the ability to counterattack and flank the enemy with ease, because you would have entrenchments and defenses out here allowing you to maneuver around towards the raid base. But now that I'm standing out here facing the fortress, you can see how dangerous this thing is. Already we can be hit from multiple angles, and as I get closer to the fortress, it only becomes more and more dangerous, because now I'm having to cover 180 degrees around myself. And once you breach the first wall, now you basically have 360 degrees of angles that you can be hit from. And you can also see compartmentalization. Again, it works here. We'll cover compartmentalization in a minute, but you can see as an attacker, I cannot maneuver outside of about a 20-degree angle from the center point of the fortress, basically trapping me and funneling me deeper into a killing field. And as I come up here into the second layer of defense, you can see I can be hit from multiple angles and peek downs from the main wall, as well as the ravelins too. And then once we come into the main courtyard, now I'm compartmentalized even more. I have to breach through these walls. I can be hit from multiple angles here and up top. And then finally, when we get into the actual main center point of the fortress, we can again be hit from a 360-degree area. There would be towers over here that are not currently built. And it just gets even more dangerous as you get inside. There is maneuvering and shooting holes to where you can't get through. These pillboxes or murder holes. So hopefully I did a good job showing you what an actual Star Fortress looks like in a video game. But when built correctly, these things are next to indestructible. So now that we're all learned siege engineers, let's go back to Omal's clip. And can you see why a design like this infuriates me? This is not a base. This is not a base. This is a box you die in. It might as well be called a coffin base. There needs to be a bastion here and here that can fire down the length of the wall, raking it, clearing the enemies so that you don't get fragged and C4'd across your walls. I swear to God, if I ever see you in game and you recognize me and you go, "Hey, Garen, love the videos," and I know you watch my videos, and I see you build a wall and you don't put a bastion on it so that your team can defend the wall. If I see you do that, and I know you watch my videos, you will never forget the day that you saw me in game. What is this video that I'm making? Seriously, do not ever build a wall that you cannot defend by shooting down its length. It's better to not have a wall than to build a box that you die in. The whole reason I have spent 5 days putting this video together is so that I never get fragged in my own base again by people who don't know how to build bases. If you don't know how to use the hammer, don't use the hammer. Okay, hopefully I've made my point. If I ever see you in game, and I know you watch my videos and you do that, I will go to the other team and surrender and calm you out to the mortar team and have a walking barrage follow you around the entire map all game if you build a wall and you don't put a bastion on it. Just to show you the proper way to do this. Okay, here's how you do it. This is good. This is bad. You put the bunkers on the corners of the walls. Do not put the bunker in the middle of the wall because it creates dead space and it's easier for the enemy to attack that. You put them on the corners so that you have the maximum length to shoot down the wall and you don't create a dead space. And then you can put barbed wire around the bunkers on the corner. All right. Hopefully I made my point. Next, compartmentalization.
Lesson.
Tris. See, this is what happens when you let an enemy run around in your base freely.
I love their spawn vehicle already.
Omaha wrecks this team in base for about 20 minutes. He even completely runs out of arrows. He's able to hide in dead space to heal up.
A tower to the left. Got him. Dude, I'm just working these guys right now. Oh, right here.
They try to call in reinforcements with helicopters. That fails. He's able to get into a tower for free.
They died. They're trying everything right now.
They have no idea where he's at. Another tower climb for free. And he's able to parkour into the main building. And finally, he hits
They've got this door
an airlock, compartmentalizing him. But he's still able to move entirely freely in the courtyard of the base. Scenarios like this happen all the time in games, and it can be completely avoided if the base builder knows what compartmentalization is. It's most commonly referred to in naval engineering, where ships would be taking rounds of torpedoes from enemy ships, and if having separate bulkheads that are compartmentalized would contain the flooding and be shut off by the sealed doors. In fortification engineering, this is called casemates, and the oldest records actually date back to 9000 BCE. But this here is Masada, an ancient Jewish fortress that was built around 72 AD, and you can see that it has multiple compartments that are built into the fortress to contain any attackers that might breach the walls. We can use this concept in our games to control and funnel the enemy to exactly where we want them to be. All right, so let's go back to my Rust fort, because I think this shows this perfectly. The simplest concept of compartmentalization is running perpendicular barricades, either barbed wire or anything that you can see over that an enemy can't hide behind, to create dead space that keeps them trapped in an area of defenses, requiring more explosives and satchels to actually breach around the base. This limits the enemy's ability to rotate around your base and restricts their freedom. Now, compartmentalization is not just about controlling the enemy's flow, but it's also about maximizing your maneuverability. A simple way to look at this is we want to reduce the enemy's maneuverability and trap them in our base while increasing our maneuverability as much as possible. So if we fly over to my first line of defense or the fortress itself, you'll notice I have a door here that actually allows us to traverse onto the China wall or the rampart of the second layer of defense, and this allows us easy maneuverability to rotate around the enemy and get better angles or positions while minimizing and reducing their maneuverability. This also doubles as a great way to seal a breach in your walls. So let's say the enemy was to breach this wall right here. Well, in a game like Rust, the attacker is going to have C4 and explosives to get deeper into the base. And the way that you shut down a raid or an attack is taking out the person carrying the explosives, because if the attackers cannot use any more explosives, then they cannot continue their raid. So the deeper they go into the base, the more dangerous this becomes for them and risky, because if you are to eliminate the guy that's carrying the C4s, all you have to do is hop down here, place a new wall, seal up the breach, and now the raid is over. It was quite hilarious to watch teams try to assault these bases, because I would set timers that would delay for like 3 minutes on the turrets so the doors wouldn't open and the enemy would think that it's safe and they would get super deep into the base, and then all of a sudden all of the doors would pop open on the turrets and just mow down the assault squad, and then I would just spawn and hop down, place a wall, and the raid is over. This happened all the time. And if you didn't know how this base worked, you would just instantly lose all of your explosives. And this is why 3 guys or even 1 guy online can completely shut down an attack when it comes to a Star Fortress with compartmentalization. So there's a few nuances with compartmentalization though. As you can see, there is some dead space here, meaning that the enemies, if they were attacking, they could be hiding behind this wall, and really you can't see them very well unless you're in these windows. So the way you avoid that is merely by standing outside the defense, and you see where the line of sights are, and then you're going to place barricades or barbed wire in areas that they cannot hide. So now you're forcing the enemy to funnel into killing fields that are easily defendable by your bastions and ravelins. Now, one of the simplest concepts with compartmentalization, this is actually one of my favorite things to do, and it's so simple, it irritates me that people don't do this, is all you have to do to maximize the defense of a base is actually just run a line of barbed wire directly out from the center line of your base. So from your center or your defensive positions, if you just put 3 to 5 pieces of barbed wire down, and if we go into this ravelin, you can see now if an enemy is trying to rotate around this base and go to the right or go to the left, they have to expose themselves and run around this barricade in order to attack the base. They cannot hug the wall and get around. It forces them to expose themselves in open terrain, giving the defenders angles to take them out. So a good rule of thumb when it comes to compartmentalization is you never want to place walls that give or create dead space for the enemy to hide behind as they're attacking you. This is bad. You do not want to do this. It is fine to do this where you place walls that are directly in line with the center line of the fortress. It does create a little bit of defensibility for the attackers where they can only be shot from this side now, but this is better than a straight wall. And then lastly, when it comes to gates, this is also a good idea to place gates not in a way that they are in line with the center line of the fortress, so that way you compartmentalize the movement. Friendlies can move between the gates, but enemies will be blocked, not allowing their movement to rotate around the base. So let's see this in action in Wardogs. I'm building a ravelin right now that's outside the main wall perimeter of the base and tower. The tower's off to the right now. It's kind of hard to not see, but you can see a bastion there on the right that's attached to the main wall. And I'm about to put down a compartmentalization wall with barbed wire that's going to segment and split this grassy area, restricting the enemy's movement. And just by putting down a simple door with the barbed wire, this allows friendlies to maneuver through this area, but restricting the enemy and forcing them to use explosives to rotate around the base. So here's another shot. I've now entered into the main compound of the base. We're inside the fort walls where the bastions would be. And I'm building a bastion up here. Now, well, technically this isn't a bastion. This was a firing wall because it's not extruding out past the wall. But you can see past the main wall, I've got a ton of barbed wire that's running in line with the center line of the base. And all of these barbed wire lines are used to compartmentalize and control the flow of the enemy into the attacking fortress. So here's a great example of compartmentalization and reducing dead space. I'm in the hillside of the sunflower fields of this tower. There's a church that's up here. This is technically the left flank of the tower. And a lot of people would put walls over here blocking off this side of the base, but that's actually a terrible thing to do in this type of terrain because it gives the enemy dead space to rotate around and hit the backside of your base. By leaving this field open and putting tank traps and barbed wire down, as well as those straight line barbed wire walls that you can see right there, it forces the enemy into a very vulnerable and open space that they cannot assault the base through. So sometimes not using walls is actually the best thing you can do. And you can see I'm placing this gate here that is perpendicular to the center line of the base, which allows you to rake fire down the gate line from the tower. And then I'm going to have a supporting bunker here to clear and rake the gate if needed. Whenever possible, you always want to be placing bunkers or window slits to clear your gates without having to open the gate to get rid of enemies that might be in the airlocks. And here you can see the compartment that I've built, the bulk ward. If an enemy was to get into here, they would not be able to rotate around easily. And I've also got doors on all of the bunkers, inhibiting and restricting them from jumping or vaulting over walls. Now the gate here on the right, you can see another door that has sandbags, and that is used to clear the gate or the airlock in the event that somebody gets in there. And then you'll notice that my courtyard is actually very open, where I'm starting to lay down barbed wire around the main tower. One of the biggest mistakes I saw people doing in the playtesting was building boxes inside of boxes. But if you build a box that you can die in, and you build another box inside of that, you just built multiple boxes that you can die in. It's actually better to have barbed wire and an open courtyard where you can clear and rake fire the majority of the base from your next line of defense. The reason I'm placing barbed wire here is to reduce dead space and the ability for enemies to hide and heal themselves like Omaha was doing in his clip. You're basically eliminating all hiding places for the enemy. The only exception to this might be putting down mortar pits or anti-tank pits that protect those expensive entrenchments with walls from other counter artillery or enemy artillery. But other than that, you want to have your courtyards open as much as possible, just using barbed wire and gates to restrict the enemy's movement if they get inside. This maximizes your friendly's ability to see and clear the courtyard and minimizing spaces in which the enemies can hide. The best way to think about this is in your last line of defense, you essentially want 2 or 3 MG nests that you can maneuver into and clear the entire courtyard without allowing the enemy to get inside your tower. Hey, would you like to be a part of a group that builds the absolute best fortresses and bases in Wardogs? Well, click the link below and join my Discord because I'm putting together just that group. Or if you just want to learn how to build better bases, you should subscribe because I'll be making more videos like this. Or you can join my Discord again because I'm probably going to be hosting some live events teaching people how to build better bases. Hope you enjoyed this video and learned something, and I will either see you in the next video or in game. But if I see you in game and I see you build a wall without a bastion, I'm gonna...